I stood there on the curb, the cold biting into my knuckles as I gripped the straps of my duffel bag, staring at the house I'd called home for 20 years. My name's Griffin Ward, 45 years old, and until last Tuesday, I thought I had a life worth something. The streetlight flickered above me, casting jagged shadows over the cracked pavement, and I could still hear the echo of the front door slamming shut behind me. Corinne, my wife, or at least the woman I'd shared a bed with for 2 decades, hadn't even looked me in the eye when I told her I'd lost my job. Finally, she'd muttered under her breath, like she'd been waiting for an excuse to cut me loose. Her voice was sharp, like a knife she'd been sharpening for years, and I felt every inch of it twist in my gut. But it was Alina, our daughter, who landed the real blow. "You're useless to us now, Dad," she said, her 19-year-old face cold as stone, her arms crossed like she was guarding herself from me. Useless. The word hit me harder than the November wind whipping through my jacket. 10 minutes later, I was out here, banished, with nothing but a bag of clothes and a briefcase they didn't even bother to ask about. They should have asked. They should have cared. Because inside that worn leather case, tucked between old receipts and a half-dead pin, was a check for $8 million, a secret I'd been carrying for 3 days. I replayed the scene in my head as I stood there, the weight of it sinking in. I'd walked through the door that afternoon, my shoulders slumped from the meeting at Bishop Robotics where they'd handed me the pink slip. 22 years with that company, and they'd let me go like I was nothing. I'd been honest with Corinne. I always was. They downsized me, I said, my voice steady even though my chest felt hollow. I expected her to ask how we'd manage, maybe even hug me like she used to when things got tough. Instead, she turned away, stirring her coffee like I'd just told her the weather. "Finally," she said, and I thought I'd misheard her at first. "What?" I asked, stepping closer. She didn't repeat it. She didn't need to. The look in her eyes, disgust, maybe relief, said it all. Alina was sprawled on the couch, scrolling her phone, and I turned to her, hoping for something softer. "Kiddo, I'll figure this out," I said, forcing a smile. She didn't even look up. "You're useless to us now, Dad," she said, like she was reading a script. My heart stopped for a second, like someone had punched me square in the chest. I waited for her to take it back, to laugh, to say she didn't mean it. She didn't. Corinne just nodded, like they'd already decided this between them. "You should go," she said, pointing to the door. "We don't need you dragging us down." I didn't argue. Maybe I should have. Maybe I should have yelled, demanded they hear me out, told them about the money right then and there. But I didn't. I packed a bag, shirts, socks, a toothbrush. Like some kind of robot, my hands moving while my mind spun. The whole time, they watched me, Corinne with her arms folded, Alina with her phone back in her face. Not a word of comfort. Not a question about where I'd sleep. I grabbed my briefcase last, the one I'd carried to work every day, and walked out. The door clicked shut, and I heard the lock turn. That was it. 20 years of marriage, 19 years of fatherhood, gone in 10 minutes. I stood there on the curb, the duffel bag heavy in my hand, the briefcase heavier in the other, and I felt the world tilt under me. How did it come to this? How did the woman I'd loved since we were kids, the girl I'd raised from diapers, turn me into trash they could toss out? The street was quiet, just the hum of a car passing now and then, and I looked back at the house one more time. The lights were on, warm and yellow, like nothing had changed inside. But everything had. I could have gone back. I could have banged on the door, waved that check in their faces, and watched them scramble to take it all back. But I didn't move. Something stopped me. Maybe pride, maybe anger, maybe the need to know what they'd do without me. They didn't know about the money. They didn't know that 3 days ago, I'd gone from a middle-class nobody to a millionaire overnight. They thought I was broke, broken, useless, and I let them think it. I shifted the briefcase to my other hand, feeling the edges of that check press against the leather. $8 million. A fortune they'd never see unless I wanted them to. I turned away from the house, my breath fogging in the air, and started walking. I didn't know where I was going. Not yet. But I knew one thing. They'd made their choice. Now it was my turn to make mine. I walked for what felt like hours, though it was probably just 20 minutes, until I hit the edge of downtown. My legs ached, my chest burned, but my head was clearing. A cheap motel sign blinked ahead, $1.60 a night, vacancy, and I figured it'd do. I checked in, the clerk barely glancing at me as I handed over cash from my wallet. The room smelled like stale smoke and bleach, but it was a bed, a roof, a lock on the door. I dropped my duffel on the floor, and set the briefcase on the wobbly desk. I opened it, pulled out the envelope, and stared at the check again. $8,300,000, made out to Griffin Ward, signed by Roland Bishop himself. It was real. It was mine. And they had no idea. I leaned back in the chair, the springs creaking under me, and let out a laugh, short, bitter, but real. They'd kicked me out like trash, but I wasn't the one who'd lost everything that night. They just didn't know it yet. I sat in that motel room, the dim light buzzing overhead, my fingers tracing the edges of the check I'd pulled from my briefcase. 3 days ago, I'd been a different man. Griffin Ward, loyal employee, husband, father, just another guy clocking in and out of a life I thought made sense. Now, I was a millionaire, alone, staring at $8. $3 million in black ink, and nobody knew but me. It started last Friday, a day that felt normal until it wasn't. I'd been called into Roland Bishop's office at Bishop Robotics, the company I'd given 22 years of my life to. Roland was the founder, a wiry old man with eyes that could cut through steel, and I figured he was about to chew me out over some deadline I'd missed. Instead, he slid an envelope across his desk, no fanfare, no handshake. "Open it," he said, his voice gravelly but steady. I did, and there it was, a check, numbers so big they didn't register at first. "What's this?" I asked, my throat dry. He leaned back in his chair, a faint smile tugging at his mouth. "You're not just an employee, Griffin. You're family. That's from a buyout clause, stock options I set aside for you years ago. You saved this company once. This is yours." I'd stared at him, then at the check, my brain scrambling to catch up. $8 million. $8 million. I'd helped him through a rough patch a decade back. Worked nights, reworked contracts, kept the ship afloat. But I never knew he'd tucked this away for me. I thanked him, stuffed the envelope in my briefcase, and walked out like nothing had happened. I didn't tell Corinne. I didn't tell Alina. I wanted to see what they'd do if they thought I was still just me, not a walking bank account. Now I knew. The motel bed creaked as I shifted, the check still in my hand. I'd kept it quiet for a reason. Corinne had been distant for years, snapping at me over bills, rolling her eyes when I talked about work, like I was some burden she had to carry. Alina, my little girl who used to climb into my lap with crayons and giggles, had turned into someone I barely recognized, sharp-tongued, obsessed with her phone, always siding with her mom. I told myself it was normal, that marriages fade, that kids grow up. But I'd also wondered, did they love me, or what I brought home? Friday, when I got that check, I decided to test it. Monday, when I lost my job, I got my answer. I'd come home, told them the truth, well, half of it. They let me go, I said, standing in the kitchen, still in my coat. Corinne's "finally" and Alina's "useless" were the nails in the coffin. They didn't ask why I was downsized, didn't care that I'd given decades to that place. They saw a paycheck vanish and turned on me like I was dead weight. If I'd waved that $8 million in their faces, would they have hugged me instead? Probably. And that's why I didn't say a word. I folded the check and slid it back into the envelope, my hands steady even though my chest felt tight. The motel room was a far cry from the house I'd left. Peeling wallpaper, a TV that didn't work, a sink that dripped every 5 seconds. But it was mine for now. I'd walked away from that curb with more than they'd ever know, and I wasn't about to run back begging for their approval. Roland's words echoed in my head. Your family. Funny how a boss I'd seen maybe twice a month saw me clearer than the people I lived with. I'd saved his company back in 2014, when we were bleeding cash and competitors were circling like vultures. I'd stayed late, crunched numbers, pitched ideas, even took a pay cut to keep us going. Roland remembered. Corinne didn't. Alina didn't. They didn't care about the nights I'd missed dinner to keep a roof over their heads, the vacations I'd skipped so Alina could have dance lessons. They saw a man who couldn't pay the bills anymore and kicked him out. But they didn't see the whole picture. I stood up, pacing the small room, my boots scuffing the worn carpet. The briefcase sat on the desk, a beat-up old thing I'd carried since my first day at Bishop. Inside, that check was my lifeline and my weapon. I could have cashed it right then, walked into a bank, and started over. A new house, a new car, a new everything. But I didn't want it yet. I wanted them to feel what they'd done, to sit in the mess they'd made without knowing I'd already won. Corinne probably thought I was sleeping in my car. Alina probably thought I was crying somewhere, begging for a job. Let them think it. Let them gloat. I'd seen their true colors: cold, selfish, ready to ditch me the second I wasn't useful. And I'd seen Roland's: loyal, grateful, a man who paid his debts. That check wasn't just money. It was proof I'd mattered to someone, even if it wasn't the people I'd given my heart to. I stopped pacing and looked out the window, the city lights smearing through the dirty glass. Downtown stretched out below, alive with noise and movement, a world that didn't care about my little drama. I could disappear into it, start fresh, be whoever I wanted. The $8 million gave me that power. But first, I needed a plan. I couldn't stay in this motel forever. $60 a night was fine for now, but I deserved better. I'd find a place, something mine, something they'd never touch. And I'd keep this secret close, let it burn in my pocket until the right moment. Corinne and Alina thought they'd won, tossing me out like garbage. They didn't know I'd walked away with everything they'd ever dreamed of. I sat back down, the chair groaning under me, and opened my wallet. A few 20s, a credit card, a picture of Alina from when she was 6, gap-toothed and grinning. I stared at it for a long time, then tucked it away. That girl was gone. The woman she'd become didn't deserve me. Neither did her mother. I closed the briefcase, locked it, and lay back on the bed, the drip of the sink counting out the seconds. They'd made their move. Now it was mine. I leaned back in the plush chair of my hotel suite, the espresso in my hand still warm, the city skyline glittering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. It was Saturday night, a week since Corinne and Alina kicked me out, and I was 20 floors above downtown, watching their lives unravel from a distance. My name's Griffin Ward, and I'd spent the last few days settling into this place, a luxury spot with marble floors and a bed that didn't creak, a far cry from that motel I'd crashed in. I'd paid cash, kept it quiet, didn't want anyone tracing me yet. The $8.3 million check was still in my briefcase, uncashed, but burning a hole in my mind. I'd been scrolling X on my phone, sipping coffee, when I saw it, Corinne's live stream. Freedom Bash, she called it, broadcasting from the house I'd paid off years ago. The thumbnail showed her raising a glass, grinning like she'd just won the lottery, and I couldn't help myself. I tapped play. Single and thriving, she toasted, her voice loud over the thumping music. The camera panned, and there was Alina, my 19-year-old daughter, dancing in a crop top I'd never have let her wear, her hair tossed back like she didn't have a care in the world. My stomach twisted. This was their victory party, celebrating me being gone. I set the espresso down, my hands clenching into fists as I watched. The living room was packed, neighbors I'd grilled burgers for, guys from our old community group, even Pete, who'd borrowed my lawnmower last summer and never returned it. They were all there, laughing, drinking, acting like I'd never existed. No one called me. No one texted. Not a single, "Hey, Griffin, you okay?" after 20 years of handshakes and small talk. I saw Corinne weave through the crowd, her red dress hugging her like she was 25 again, not 43. She'd always been beautiful, still was, but that beauty felt like a mask now, hiding the woman who'd turned on me without a second thought. "To new beginnings," she shouted, and the room cheered. Alina twirled, giggling, her phone out, probably snapping selfies for her followers. I recognized that couch she danced near. I'd picked it out, hauled it home, vacuumed it 100 times. Now it was their stage, and I was the ghost they'd exorcised. I muted the stream, the silence of the suite rushing in, and leaned my head back, staring at the ceiling. They didn't just kick me out. They erased me. I could have been there, I thought. If I'd told them about the money that night on the curb, waved that check like a white flag, they'd have dragged me back inside. Corinne would have poured me a drink. Alina would have hugged me. And this party would have been for me, not against me. But I didn't. I kept it hidden, locked in my briefcase, because I needed to know who they really were. And this Freedom Bash, was my answer. They didn't miss me. They didn't love me. They loved the paycheck I'd brought home, the stability I'd built, and when that was gone, so was I. I picked up my phone again, scrolled through the comments on the stream. "Looking hot, Corinne. Slay, Alina. Good riddance to dead weight." That last one stung, but I didn't flinch. Dead weight. That's what they thought I was. I tossed the phone onto the table and stood, walking to the window. The city sprawled out below, lights flickering like stars, and I felt a strange calm settle over me. They could party all they wanted. They didn't know what I had up my sleeve. Earlier that day, I'd met with Lorraine, my lawyer. She was a sharp woman, mid-50s, with a no-nonsense stare and a pin that never stopped moving. I'd found her through a guy at Bishop Robotics, someone Roland trusted, and she'd agreed to meet me at a quiet cafe downtown. I'd brought Corinne's divorce papers, delivered to my old work address 2 days after I'd left, like she couldn't wait to make it official. Lorraine flipped through them, her glasses perched on her nose, and smirked. "She's in for a rude awakening," she said, tapping the page. "This house, still in your name. The savings? Joint, but you've got leverage. And she's claiming you abandoned her. Cute, considering she locked you out." I told Lorraine everything. Losing my job, the $8 million, the curb, the silence. She didn't blink at the money. "We'll play this smart," she said. "Let her dig her own grave." I liked her already. She didn't ask why I hadn't cashed the check yet, didn't push me to fight dirty. She just listened, planned, and promised me options. Options I hadn't had a week ago. I turned from the window, the live stream still muted on my phone, and grabbed my espresso again. The bitterness matched my mood, but it kept me sharp. Corinne thought she'd won. New life, new story, me out of the picture. Alina thought she was free, too, dancing like I'd never mattered. But they didn't know I was watching. They didn't know I was sitting in a suite that cost more per night than our old mortgage payment. They didn't know about Lorraine, or the check, or the fact that I wasn't broken, not yet. I could have crashed that party, walked in with my head high, let them see me standing tall. But why? They'd made their choice. I didn't need their applause. I needed time, to think, to plan, to figure out who Griffin Ward was without them. I glanced at the briefcase on the dresser, the leather scuffed but solid, holding my future. $8 million. A fortune they'd never touch unless I let them. The stream looped back to Corinne's toast, her smile wide, and I shut it off. Enough. I walked to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, and looked in the mirror. Tired eyes, gray creeping into my beard, but I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. They could party tonight, laugh at the dead weight they'd shed. Tomorrow, I'd start building something new, something mine. Lorraine's words stuck with me. She's in for a rude awakening. I dried my face, a slow grin tugging at my lips. They thought this was their victory. They had no idea it was just the beginning of mine. I stood in the middle of my new apartment, the keys still warm in my hand, the echo of my footsteps bouncing off the bare walls. It was Sunday, a week after Corinne's Freedom Bash, and I decided I was done with motels and hotel suites. My name's Griffin Ward, 45 years old, and I'd just signed the papers on a sleek downtown place. High ceilings, hardwood floors, a view of the river cutting through the city like a silver thread. I'd paid cash, dipped into the $8.3 million check I'd finally cashed that Friday, and didn't blink when the realtor handed me the deed. The briefcase sat on the counter, lighter now without that envelope, but heavier with what it meant. Freedom, choices, a life I could build on my own terms. I didn't tell Corinne. I didn't tell Alina. They didn't need to know. They'd tossed me out, called me useless, and I wasn't about to run back with proof I wasn't. This place was mine, mine alone, and I filled it with things I'd always wanted but never had time for. A telescope by the window, because I'd loved stargazing as a kid. A grand piano, black and shiny, even though I'd never played a note. And on the walls, abstract art, bold slashes of color that didn't need to make sense, just like me right now. The first night, I wandered the building, restless, not ready to sit still. That's when I met Kale. I'd taken the elevator down to the lobby, thinking I'd grab a coffee from the shop across the street, when I noticed the gallery tucked into the ground floor. The sign read, "Open late," and through the glass, I saw paintings, wild, messy things that pulled me in. I stepped inside, the bell jingling, and there he was, Kale, maybe 30, with paint-stained hands and a mop of dark hair falling into his eyes. "Hey," he said, looking up from a canvas he was wiping down. "You lost." I laughed, a real laugh, the first in weeks. "Maybe," I said. "Just moved in upstairs." He nodded, like that was enough, and we started talking. Not about jobs or money or what I'd lost. He didn't care about that. We talked about color, how blue could feel heavy or light depending on the shade, how grief was like a brushstroke you couldn't erase. I told him about Corinne and Alina, not the money part, just the curb, the duffel bag, the way they'd turned me into nothing. He listened, really listened, his eyes steady on mine, not judging, just there. "Sounds like they painted you out of their picture," he said, and I nodded. "Yeah, Guess I'm starting a new canvas. Kale became a habit after that. Most nights, I'd wander down to the gallery after he closed up, and we'd sit on the floor with takeout, pizza, Thai, whatever, and talk. He'd show me his work, canvases full of chaos and beauty, and I'd tell him about my old life. Not the $8 million. I kept that locked tight, but the little things. How I'd built Alina's dollhouse when she was 5, how Corinne used to hum while she cooked. Kale didn't ask what I did for work, didn't care about titles or bank accounts. He cared that I showed up, that I listened when he rambled about light and shadow. One night, he handed me a brush. "Try it," he said, pointing to a blank canvas. I hesitated. My hands were made for spreadsheets, not art, but he just grinned. "No rules, Griffin. Just move." So I did. I dipped the brush in red, dragged it across the white, and watched it bleed. It felt good, messy, alive. "Not bad," Kale said, leaning back with a smirk. "You've got something in you." I didn't know what, but for the first time in weeks, I felt seen, not as a husband, a father, a paycheck, just me. The apartment started to feel like home. I'd wake up early, brew coffee in the fancy machine I'd bought, and stand by the window with my telescope, watching the stars fade into morning. I'd play the piano, fumbling through chords I found online, the sound filling the empty space. The art on the walls, some Kale's, some from galleries I'd explored, made the place mine, not ours. I didn't miss the old house, not really. It had been Corinne's domain, her curtains, her rules, her cold stares. This was different. I'd sit on the leather couch I'd picked out, sip whiskey I'd never have bought before, and think about how far I'd come from that curb. The $8 million was in a new account now, growing quietly, and Lorraine, my lawyer, was handling the divorce papers. She'd called that morning, her voice crisp. "Corinne's pushing for alimony," she said. "Thinks she's entitled. We'll let her think that for now." I didn't care what Corinne thought. She could dance in her freedom, all she wanted. I had mine right here. Kale showed up one evening with a bottle of wine and a grin. "Housewarming," he said, stepping inside. He didn't gawk at the place, didn't ask how I'd afforded it, just plopped onto the couch and poured us glasses. We talked late, about art, about being discarded, about starting over. "You ever miss them?" he asked, swirling his wine. I thought about it, staring at the red in my glass. "Sometimes," I said, "but not enough to go back." He nodded, like he got it, and we clinked glasses. It hit me then. Kale was the first person in years who didn't want something from me. Not money, not status, just company. Corinne and Alina had taken me for granted, measured me by what I could give. Kale didn't. He saw the man under the mess, and that was enough. I walked him to the elevator later, the building quiet around us. "Thanks," I said, not sure what for, maybe everything. He shrugged. "Anytime, man. Keep painting." The doors closed, and I went back upstairs, the apartment warm and still. I stood by the telescope, looking out at the night, and felt something shift. This wasn't just a place. It was a life, one I was building, piece by piece, without their shadows. The $8 million had bought the walls, but Kale, the art, the piano, they were filling them. Corinne and Alina could keep their party, their house, their lies. I had something better now. I had me. I sat on my new leather couch, the apartment quiet except for the hum of the city outside, my phone resting on my knee. It was a Tuesday night, 2 weeks since I'd moved in, and I'd been restless all day. My name's Griffin Ward, 45, and I'd been carrying a weight I couldn't shake. The $8.3 million was safe in my account. My divorce papers were with Lorraine, and my life was starting to feel like mine again. But Corinne and Alina, they were still out there, living like I'd never mattered, dancing on the ashes of what we'd had. I'd seen their freedom bash online, watched them toast to a life without me, and it gnawed at me. Not because I wanted them back, I didn't, but because they thought they'd won. They thought I was broken, penniless, a nobody they could forget. They didn't know about the money, the apartment, the man I was becoming. And that's when I decided to do it. I grabbed my phone, opened the camera, and hit record. No script, no plan, just me and the truth. The day I lost my job, I told my family. I said, my voice steady, my face off screen. They kicked me out, called me useless. What they didn't know, I'd just received $8 million. I stopped there, kept it short, and uploaded it to X. No names, no faces, just the facts. Then I waited. It took less than an hour. I'd poured a glass of whiskey, settled by the window with my telescope, when my phone started buzzing. Notifications, likes, retweets, comments, piling up like snow in a storm. I opened the app, and there it was, my clip, viral, spreading faster than I'd imagined. Holy crap, this guy's a legend, someone wrote. Kicked out with $8 million in his pocket? Iconic. The numbers climbed, 10,000 views, then 50,000, then 100,000 in a day. People were tagging me, asking for the full story, begging for a face to the voice. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The internet did the work for me. By Wednesday morning, I had emails from podcast hosts, a local news station, even a guy offering me a book deal. Millionaire underdog, he pitched. I laughed, sipping my coffee, but I didn't reply. I wasn't ready to step into the spotlight, not yet. What I wanted was already happening. I scrolled X again, and that's when I saw it. The backlash hitting Corinne and Alina. Their accounts weren't hard to find. Corinne's was public, full of selfies and captions about living her best life. Alina's was flashier, dance videos, outfit pics, the kind of stuff that got her thousands of followers. I hadn't checked them since the party, but now I did. The comments were brutal. You kicked out your millionaire husband. One read under Corinne's latest post, a shot of her in a sundress, smiling like nothing was wrong. Gold diggers in HD, another said. Alina's page was worse. Imagine calling your dad useless when he's sitting on $8 million, someone wrote. Trash family, another added. I didn't smile, didn't gloat, just watched it unfold. They built their little kingdom on likes and lies, and now it was crumbling. Corinne tried to fight back. You don't know the whole story. She replied to one, but it only made it worse. What story? You locked him out. Someone shot back. Alina went quiet, her last post, a clip from the party, buried under a flood of hate. I leaned back, the whiskey warm in my hand, and let it sink in. They didn't know it was me, not for sure, but they had to suspect. I'd kept it vague on purpose. No Corinne, no Alina, just my family. But the timing, the details, it wouldn't take a genius to connect the dots. I pictured them at home, staring at their phones, panic creeping in. Did Corinne's glass slip from her hand when she saw the comments? Did Alina's face go pale, her fingers hovering over a text she'd never sent? I didn't know, and I didn't care not enough to check. I'd given them a chance that night on the curb. I'd stood there, duffel bag in hand, waiting for one word of kindness, one question about how I'd manage. They'd given me nothing but useless and a locked door. Now the world was giving them something back. I set the phone down, walked to the piano, and played a few clumsy notes, the sound filling the apartment. It wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about truth. They'd painted me as a failure, and I'd let them. Until now. The next day, my phone wouldn't stop. Lorraine called at noon, her voice sharp with amusement. You've stirred up a hornet's nest, she said. Corinne's lawyer reached out fishing, asking if you've got assets she doesn't know about. I played dumb. I grinned, leaning against the counter. Good. Let her sweat. Lorraine chuckled. Oh, she is. That video's everywhere. You're a folk hero out there. I didn't feel like a hero, just a man who'd stopped swallowing the lies. Kale dropped by that night, pizza box in hand, and I told him about it. You're a savage, he said, laughing, sprawled on my couch. They deserve it. I shrugged. They made their bed. He didn't push, just ate his slice and changed the subject to a new painting he was working on. That's what I liked about Kale. He didn't dig for drama. He just let me be. By Thursday, the clip had 1 million views. X was a battlefield. Some called me a king. Others said I was petty. But the tide had turned on Corinne and Alina. Their followers dropped. Their posts got ratioed. Their perfect little world cracked open. I saw a screenshot of Alina crying on a friend's story. She's a mess, the caption read. Part of me ached, the part that remembered her as my little girl, but it faded fast. She'd chosen her side. Corinne posted a cryptic, truth will come out, but no one bought it. I didn't need them to. I'd said my piece, 20 seconds that flipped the script. I stood by the window that night, the river dark below, and felt lighter than I had in years. They'd broken me once, on that curb, but I'd broken them back, not with fists or shouts, but with the quiet power of what they'd never seen coming. The $8 million was mine. The story was mine, and they couldn't take it away. I woke up Friday morning to the sun slicing through my apartment blinds, the river outside shimmering like it was mocking the chaos in my phone. My name's Griffin Ward, 45, and I'd been riding the high of that viral live stream all week. $8 million in my account, a new life in my hands, and Corinne and Alina scrambling in the wreckage I'd left behind. I'd poured my coffee, the rich smell filling the kitchen, when I noticed the notifications. Not the usual buzz, likes, retweets, strangers calling me a legend, but something else. Texts. Dozens of them. I grabbed my phone, scrolled, and saw the names, Corinne, Alina, over and over. I counted later, 175 messages total, starting slow Wednesday night, then piling up like a flood by Thursday. I didn't open them at first. I just stared at the screen, the numbers climbing as I stood there, my coffee cooling in my hand. They'd ignored me for weeks, locked me out, partied like I was dead. Now they wanted to talk. I set the phone down, took a sip, and let the bitterness match the taste in my mouth. They'd made their move. This was mine. It started with Corinne. Wednesday, 9:47 p.m. Can we talk? Simple, casual, like she was asking about dinner plans. Then another, an hour later. Griffin, please call me. By Thursday morning, it was, I know you're mad, but we need to discuss this. I scrolled past, my thumb steady, my chest tight. Alina's came next, short, scattered, like she couldn't decide what to say. Dad, I saw the video, she sent at midnight. Then, 2 a.m. Are you okay? I almost laughed at that one. Okay. I'd been okay the second I walked away from that curb. But the messages kept coming, and by Thursday night, they turned desperate. Corinne, we were happy once. Don't throw that away. Alina, Dad, I didn't mean it. I was just mad, okay? Then voice notes. Alina's voice, shaky, tears cutting through the static. I'm sorry, I messed up. Please don't hate me. I didn't play them all. I couldn't. Not yet. I tossed the phone onto the counter and walked away, the piano catching my eye. I sat, played a few notes, loud, jagged, and tried to drown them out. They didn't stop. Friday morning, Corinne sent a photo. Our wedding day, me in a cheap tux, her in white. Both of us grinning like the world was ours. Remember this? She wrote. I did. I remembered the vows, the promises, the years I'd spent believing them. I remembered her, finally, when I lost my job, her nod when Alina called me useless. I deleted the photo, my fingers cold, and kept scrolling. Alina's next. Dad, I need you. Mom's a wreck. Please. Need me? She hadn't needed me when she watched me pack my bag, when she turned back to her phone like I was already gone. I leaned against the counter, the city humming outside, and felt the weight of it all. 175 messages, apologies, pleas, guilt trips, and not one asked what happened with the money, how I'd gotten it, what I'd been through. They weren't sorry for me. They were sorry for themselves. I could have answered. Could have tapped out a reply, too late, and left it there. Could have called, heard their voices, let them explain. But why? They'd had their chance that night, when I stood in the kitchen, my coat still on, telling them I'd lost my job. I'd waited seconds, maybe minutes for a hug, a question, anything. They gave me useless and a locked door. Now, with the world watching, with their followers turning on them, they wanted me back. I walked to the window, the telescope glinting in the sun, and stared at the river. The $8 million had flipped the game. They knew it now, or at least suspected. That video, those 20 seconds, had cracked their perfect little world. Gold diggers, the internet called them, and I didn't argue. I didn't have to. The truth was doing its work. Cale showed up that afternoon, knocking on my door with a grin and a six-pack. Heard you're famous, he said, stepping inside. I shrugged, grabbed a beer, and told him about the messages. 175, I said, shaking my head. They're losing it. He sat on the couch, cracked his can open, and listened as I read a few out loud. We were happy once, I quoted, my voice flat. Cale snorted. Yeah, when you were their ATM. I nodded, the words hitting harder than I'd expected. He was right. They didn't miss me, the late nights I'd worked, the mornings I'd made Alina pancakes, the years I'd kept us afloat. They missed the money they thought I didn't have. What are you going to do? Cale asked, leaning back. I took a long sip, the cold burning my throat. Nothing, I said. They don't get me back just because they're scared. He grinned. Cold, man. I like it. I didn't feel cold, just clear. Lorraine called later, her voice brisk. Corinne's lawyer's sniffing around, she said. Wants to know if that $8 million's real. I said we'd disclose assets when we're ready. I smirked. Let them squirm. She laughed, a sharp sound. They are. Social media is tearing them apart. I didn't need her to tell me. I'd seen it. Corinne's posts were down to damage control. Alina's account was private now. 175 messages, and none of them changed the facts. They'd throw me out, duffel bag and all. No keys, no mercy. I'd walked away with everything, money, pride, a future, and they couldn't handle it. That night, I sat by the piano, the apartment dark except for the city lights. I opened my phone, scrolled through the text one last time. Alina's last one. Dad, I love you. Please. My chest ached. Old love, old pain. But I didn't type back. Love didn't lock you out. Love didn't call you useless. I locked the phone, set it aside, and played a slow, heavy tune I'd been messing with. The notes filled the room, steady, mine. 175 messages, and I didn't owe them a single word. They'd lost me, not the money, not the house, but me. And I wasn't going back. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of the downtown event hall, my reflection sharp against the night sky, a glass of bourbon in my hand. My name's Griffin Ward, 45, and tonight was my night, my rules, my game. It was Saturday, a month since that viral video shook Corinne and Alina's world, and I decided to make a move. Not a loud one, not a cruel one, just a flex of the power they didn't know I had. I'd set up a charity gala through a new LLC, Ward Ventures, clean and untraceable to me unless you dug deep. The invites went out to media, investors, old Bishop Robotics execs, even Roland Bishop himself, who'd sent a warm RSVP. Black tie, open bar, proceeds to a local housing fund for single moms, something I cared about, something real. I'd spent weeks planning it with Lorraine's help, keeping my name off the public list. No one knew I was the man behind it, just a private donor with deep pockets. Corinne didn't get an invite. Neither did Alina. But I knew they'd hear about it. Word travels fast in this town. I adjusted my tie, the $8.3 million in my account humming like a quiet engine, and scanned the room. Chandeliers sparkled, jazz played soft, and the crowd buzzed with suits and gowns. This was my stage now. I'd chosen the venue carefully, high-end, exclusive, the kind of place Corinne would have begged to be seen at. The guest list was my design too. People who'd known me at Bishop, who'd respected my work, mixed with new faces who didn't know my past. No one from our old life, none of Corinne's friends, none of Alina's clique. I wanted a clean slate, a night where I wasn't the guy who got kicked out, just Griffin Ward, the man who'd turned his life around. Roland was there, near the bar, laughing with a reporter. He'd hugged me when he arrived, his grip strong. Proud of you, he'd said. No questions about the money or the video. I'd smiled, thanked him, and moved on. Cale was here too, looking out of place in a borrowed suit but grinning like he owned the room. Fancy, he'd whispered, nudging me. You're a big shot now. I'd laughed, low, and handed him a drink. He didn't know the half of it. The night was perfect until they showed up. I was near the balcony, talking to a woman from the housing fund, when I heard the commotion at the entrance. Raised voices, a flash of red dress through the crowd. Corinne. My stomach tightened, but I didn't move. I sipped my bourbon, kept my eyes on the woman in front of me, and listened as security handled it. Ma'am, you're not on the list, a guard said, firm but calm. Then Alina's voice, high and desperate. He's my dad. Just let us in. I excused myself, stepped closer to the railing, and looked down. There they were, Corinne in that red dress, clutching her purse like a lifeline, Alina in heels too high, makeup heavy, her face flushed with anger. They'd heard about the gala, probably through X or a loose-lipped guest, and thought they could crash it. They thought wrong. Security was polite but ironclad, my instructions. No one invited guests, no exceptions. I could have gone down there. Could have signaled the guards, let them in, heard them out. Part of me, the old part, the one that remembered Alina's pigtails and Corinne's laugh, wanted to. But I stayed put, Cale at my side, his hand light on my shoulder. They've got some nerve, he muttered, watching them argue with the guard. I nodded, my jaw tight. Nerve wasn't the word, desperation was. They'd sent 175 messages, apologies, tears, promises, and I hadn't answered. Now they were here, chasing a rumor, thinking they could charm their way back into my life. Please. Corinne's voice carried, sharp and cracking. I just need to see him. The crowd near the entrance was staring now, whispers rippling through the room. I turned away, walked back to the balcony's edge, and looked out at the city lights. I didn't wave. I didn't blink. They didn't get to ruin this. The guards escorted them out. I didn't watch, but I heard the doors close, the chatter in the room picking back up. Cale handed me another bourbon. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low. I took a sip, let the burn settle me. "Yeah," I said. "Better than okay." And I was. This night wasn't about them. It was about me, what I'd built, what I could do. The housing fund rep found me again, thanked me for the donation, 6 figures, anonymous, and I smiled, shook her hand. Roland caught my eye from across the room, raised his glass. The jazz band switched to something slower, and I felt the weight of the $8 million, not as a secret anymore, but as a tool. I'd made this happen, my money, my call, my night. Corinne and Alina could beg at the door, but they weren't part. Later, Lorraine pulled me aside, her dress sharp as her smile. "Heard about the gatecrashers," she said, sipping champagne. "Nice touch, keeping them out." I shrugged. "They invited themselves out of my life a while ago." She nodded, her eyes scanning the room. "You've got this place eating out of your hand. Media's asking who the mystery donor is." I glanced at the reporters near the bar, notebooks out, cameras flashing. "Let them wonder," I said. She smirked. "Smart. Keeps you in control." That's what this was, control. Not over them, but over me. I'd let Corinne and Alina call the shots once, let them shove me to the curb like trash. Not anymore. The gala wrapped late, guests trickling out, handshakes and business cards piling up. Cale stayed, helped me stack chairs like it was no big deal. "You threw one hell of a party," he said, loosening his tie. I laughed, the bourbon still warm in my veins. "First of many." He grinned, and we walked out together, the night air cool against my face. The guards confirmed Corinne and Alina were long gone. No scene, no letters, just footprints they'd never leave here again. I looked up at the stars, faint above the city glow, and felt solid. They'd come looking for the old Griffin, the one they could use, the one they thought they knew. They found me instead, the man with the guest list, the money, the future, and they weren't on it. I sat on the floor of my apartment, the hardwood cool under me, surrounded by boxes I'd pulled from a storage unit I'd forgotten I had. My name's Griffin Ward, 45, and it was a quiet Sunday afternoon, a week after the gala that shut Corinne and Alina out of my new world. The $8.3 million was humming along in my account. Ward Ventures was picking up steam, and I'd been feeling lighter, stronger than I had in months. But today, I decided to dig into the past, not sure why, maybe just to tie up loose ends. The unit was a time capsule, stuff from the house I hadn't touched since Corinne kicked me out, things I'd shoved away when I was too raw to face them. I'd hauled a few boxes back, cracked them open, and now I was knee-deep in memories I didn't expect to hit so hard. Old photos, a chipped mug I'd used every morning, a stack of Alina's school projects. Then I found the letters, handwritten, folded tight, tucked in a shoebox I didn't recognize. My chest tightened as I pulled them out. The paper yellowed, her little kid scrawl staring back at me. I opened the first one, my hand steady but my breath uneven. "Dear Daddy." It started, the letters wobbly, probably from when she was 6 or 7. "You're the best dad. I love when you read me stories. Can we get a puppy?" I could hear her voice, high and giggling, the way she'd crawl into my lap with a book, her hair smelling like strawberry shampoo. I'd read to her every night back then. Dr. Seuss, fairy tales, whatever she wanted, until she'd fall asleep against my shoulder. I flipped to another. "Thank you for fixing my bike, Daddy. You're so strong." That was after I'd spent a Saturday in the garage, grease on my hands, tweaking the chain so she could ride it to the park. She'd hugged me so tight, her arms barely reaching around my waist. Another. "I'm scared of the dark, but you make it okay." That one hurt. Nights I'd sat by her bed, holding her hand when nightmares woke her, telling her I'd chase the monsters away. My throat closed up, and I set the letters down, staring at the wall where Cale's painting hung, all reds and blues clashing. She'd loved me once. Really loved me. Not my job, not my money, just me. I rubbed my face, the beard scratching my palms, and tried to square it with the Alina who'd called me useless, who'd watched me pack my bag without a word. Where did that girl go? I dug deeper into the box. More letters, drawings, a stick-figure family with Daddy, in the middle, taller than the rest. "You're the best," one said, with a heart in red crayon. My chest ached, a dull, heavy thing, and I remembered those days. Ballet recitals where I'd clapped louder than anyone, hospital nights when she'd had pneumonia and I'd slept in a chair by her bed, spelling bees where I'd drilled her on words until she'd beam with pride. I wasn't useless then. I was her hero, her rock, the guy who made everything okay. I leaned back against the couch, the letters in my lap, and let the memories flood in. Corinne was there too, in the background, cooking dinner, laughing at my dumb jokes, kissing me goodnight. We'd been a team once, a family. When did it stop? When did I become the guy they could throw away? I stood up, paced the room, the telescope catching my eye. The stars were out there, steady, like they'd been when Alina was little, and I'd point them out from her window. I'd never been useless. Not to her. Not then. I'd just stopped being convenient. The job kept me late. The bills piled up, Corinne's patience thinned, and Alina grew into someone who cared more about followers than family. I sat back down, picked up another letter. I love you forever, Daddy, and felt the ache turn sharp. They didn't just lose the $8 million that night on the curb. They lost me. The man who'd stayed up for nightmares, who'd built dollhouses, who'd loved them so deep it blinded me to their flaws. I'd given them everything, and they'd given me a duffel bag and a locked door. The letters trembled in my hands, and I set them aside, my eyes burning but dry. I wasn't crying. Not for them, not anymore. Cale knocked later, his usual easy grin fading when he saw the mess. You okay? He asked, stepping over a box. I nodded, handed him a beer from the fridge. Found some old stuff, I said, pointing to the letters. He sat, read one, You're the Best Dad, and looked at me, quiet for once. She meant it then, he said. Yeah, I replied, my voice rough. Then, he didn't push, just sipped his beer, let me talk. I told him about the recitals, the bike, the nights I'd been her shield. They forgot that guy, I said. Or maybe they never saw him. Cale shrugged. Their loss, man. You're still him. I wanted to believe that. Maybe I did. The $8 million, the apartment, the gala, they were mine. But these letters, they were me. The real me, not the paycheck they'd mourned. I packed the letters back in the box that night, kept them on a shelf by the piano. Not to wallow, but to remember, I've been enough once, and I could be again, for myself. Lorraine called the next day, updating me on the divorce. Corinne's stalling, she said. Probably hoping you'll crack. I wouldn't. Those letters didn't change the curb, the useless, the party. They changed me. I stood by the window, the river dark below, and felt the past settle, not gone, but quieter. They'd lost more than they knew, and I'd found more than they'd ever see. The man in those letters wasn't gone. He was right here, holding the reins. I leaned against the kitchen counter in my apartment, the morning sun spilling through the windows, a mug of coffee warming my hands. My name's Griffin Ward, 45, and it was a crisp Monday, 2 months since I'd walked away from that curb with $8.3 million in my briefcase and a family that didn't want me. The gala had come and gone, the letters from Alina's past were tucked away, and I'd been building something new, Ward Ventures, a life that didn't bend to anyone else's rules. But today, I was waiting for a different kind of payoff. Lorraine had called last night, her voice smug through the phone. Corinne's listing the house, she'd said. Thinks it's hers to sell. It's not. I'd grinned, picturing Corinne's face when she'd realized the truth. The house, our house, the one I'd paid off with years of late nights at Bishop Robotics, was still in my name. She'd locked me out, partied in it, claimed it as her victory prize, but the deed said otherwise. I told Lorraine to let it play out. Let Corinne stage her open houses, let her dream of a big check. I'd pull the rug out when the time was right. I'd seen the listing online a week ago, photos of the living room I'd furnished, the kitchen where I'd made Alina's birthday cakes, the backyard where we'd grilled on summers that felt endless. Move-in ready, the ad boasted. Perfect family home. Corinne had staged it like a magazine. New pillows, fresh paint, every trace of me scrubbed out. The asking price was steep, a number that screamed greed, and I'd watched the views climb, the offers roll in. She didn't know I was tracking it, didn't know Lorraine had eyes on every move. I sipped my coffee, the bitterness sharp, and felt a calm settle over me. She thought she'd won, kicked me out, kept the house, moved on. But I'd been the one paying the mortgage, the taxes, the repairs, all while she complained about my long hours. That house was mine, legally, fully, and I'd let her think otherwise just long enough to watch her fall. Lorraine called again that afternoon, her tone clipped with excitement. Highest bidders and cash offer, over asking. She's set to close tomorrow. I stood by the telescope, the river glinting below, and nodded to myself. Cancel it, I said. Pull the listing. It's not for sale. She laughed, A short, bright sound. You're a bastard, Griffin. I love it. I'll handle the realtor. I hung up, imagining Corinne's smug smile as she signed papers, picturing the money she thought she'd pocket. She'd probably already spent it in her head: new car, new clothes, a fresh start without me. I waited a day, let her savor it, let the buyer wire the deposit. Then Lorraine made the call. The listing vanished from the site that night, and I pictured the chaos: Corinne's phone ringing, the realtor stammering, the deal collapsing. I didn't need to see it. I knew. Tuesday morning, X lit up with the story. Someone, a neighbor, maybe, posted, "Drama on Elm Street. House sale canceled last minute. Wife freaking out." Comments poured in, linking it to my video, to Corinne and Alina's downfall. "Kicked out the millionaire, now losing the house," one read. I scrolled, my coffee cold now, and felt no guilt, just a quiet satisfaction. She'd called me useless, locked me out of my own home, and thought she could cash in on it. Not anymore. Lorraine texted later. She's livid. Screamed at the realtor, "This is my home." Fainted when she saw the deed. I smirked, setting the phone down. It wasn't her home. It never had been, not without me. I could have sold it myself, pocketed the cash, added it to the $8 million. But that wasn't the point. I've been thinking about those letters, about the man I'd been, Alina's dad, the guy who fixed bikes and chased nightmares away. I didn't want the house back. I didn't want their ghosts, but I didn't want Corinne to have it either. So I did something else. I'd met a woman at the Gala, a single mom named Tara, who ran the housing fund. She told me about her son, autistic, 7 years old, and how they'd been denied rentals over and over, landlords scared off by his meltdowns, her budget stretched thin. I listened, nodded, and kept her card. Now, I called her. "The house on Elm," I said. "It's yours. No rent, no sale, just yours." She went quiet, then stammered, "Griffin, are you serious?" I was. I signed the deed over that afternoon, Lorraine notarizing it with a grin. "You're a softie under all this," she said. I shrugged. "Maybe. We're just done with their game." Wednesday, I drove by, not to gloat, but to see it through. Tara's car was in the driveway, a tricycle on the lawn, boxes stacked by the door. Corinne was there too, standing on the curb, her face pale, a suitcase at her feet. She'd fainted, Lorraine said, when Tara showed up with the keys, my keys, handed over without a word. I slowed the car, watched her stare at the house, her hands shaking. She didn't see me. Didn't need to. Alina wasn't there, probably at a friend's, hiding from the mess. I drove on, the street fading in my rearview, and felt the weight lift. That house had been mine, my work, my love, my life, and they'd turned it into a weapon against me. Now it was Tara's, a fresh start for her and her boy, not a trophy for Corinne's greed. Cale met me later, pizza in hand, and I told him the story. "You gave it away?" he asked, eyes wide. "Just like that." I nodded, cracking a beer. "Didn't need it." "They did." He shook his head, grinning. "You're something else, man." Maybe I was. The $8 million was enough, more than enough, and the house wasn't about money anymore. It was about who I'd been, who I was now. Corinne thought it was hers, thought she could erase me and profit. She'd lost it all: a home, pride, the life she built. I turned on the piano that night, played something slow, and let the notes carry me. She'd fainted on the lawn, but I was standing taller than ever. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, the steam from my shower still clinging to the glass, my razor scraping through the gray-flecked beard I'd let grow wild these past months. My name's Griffin Ward, 45, and it was a quiet Tuesday morning, 6 months since Corinne and Alina kicked me to the curb with a duffel bag and no goodbye. The $8.3 million was mine, Ward Ventures was thriving, and the house I'd given away to Tara and her son was a memory I didn't miss. I rinsed the blade, watched the water swirl down the drain, and studied my face, older, sure, with lines around my eyes that hadn't been there a year ago, but calmer, sharper too. I wasn't the man who'd begged to be seen that night, who'd stood on the street waiting for a word that never came. I was someone else now, someone whole, and I could feel it in the way I moved, the way I breathed. The apartment was silent except for the drip of the faucet, the city waking up outside, and I brushed my beard into shape, liking the way it framed me, rugged, steady, mine. 6 months. It felt like a lifetime. I'd cashed that check, built a new home, thrown a gala, given away a house, and watched Corinne and Alina's world crack under the weight of their own choices. The viral video, those 20 seconds where I told the truth, still echoed online, but I didn't check the views anymore. I didn't need to. The 175 messages they'd sent were still in my phone, unread since that frantic week, and every now and then, a new one popped up. Corinne last week. Griffin, we need to settle this. Please. Alina a month ago. Dad, I miss you. I didn't reply. Not because I hated them, hate was too heavy to carry, but because I loved myself too much to go back. I'd spent years pouring everything into them, money, time, heart, only to get useless and a locked door. Now, I poured into me. The telescope by the window, the piano I played every night, the art on my walls. It was a life I'd built from the ashes, and it fit me better than that old house ever had. I stepped into the kitchen, brewed coffee, and thought about how it started. That night on the curb, the briefcase heavy with a secret they didn't care to ask about. I'd been shaken then, lost, but I'd walked away with more than they'd ever know. The $8 million was the spark, but it wasn't the fire. The fire was me figuring out who I was without their shadows, finding Kale, giving Tara a home, standing tall at that gala while they begged at the door. I sipped my coffee, the bitterness waking me up, and glanced at the piano. I'd been practicing, getting better, the notes smoother now. Last night, Kale had sat on the couch, listening, and said, "You're good, man. Really good." I grinned, kept playing, felt the music fill the space. It wasn't about being perfect, it was about being mine. Corinne and Alina had their chances, hundreds of them, and they'd chosen to see me as nothing. I saw me as everything now. The phone buzzed on the counter. Lorraine, checking in. "Divorce is final next week," she said, her voice brisk. Corinne's still pushing for something, but she's got nothing left to stand on. I leaned against the counter, the river glinting outside. "Good," I said. "Let it end." She paused, then added, "You're a different guy, Griffin. Stronger." I thanked her, hung up, and felt the truth of it settle. I was. The old Griffin would have caved, answered those messages, let them back in, tried to fix what they'd broken. This Griffin didn't. I'd given the house away not to spite them, but to free myself, to hand it to someone who'd value it. Tara had sent me a photo last week, her son on that tricycle, smiling wide, and I'd framed it, set it by the telescope. That was worth more than any check Corinne could have cashed. I walked to the window, the city sprawling below, and thought about the past 6 months. The motel, the apartment, the gala, the letters, each step had peeled back a layer, showed me who I could be. Kale had been there, steady, a friend who didn't ask for anything but gave me plenty, laughter, pain on my hands, a nudge to keep going. Roland, too, with his quiet pride at the gala, his "your family" still ringing true. They saw me when Corinne and Alina didn't, and that was enough. I didn't need their apologies, their tears, their "I miss you" I had peace, real peace, and a future that didn't bend to their greed. The phone buzzed again, Alina this time. "Dad, can we just talk?" I looked at it, felt the old ache flicker, then fade. I locked the screen, set it down. Some people don't get second chances, not because you won't give them, but because you can't risk losing yourself again. I grabbed my jacket, headed out to meet Kale at the gallery. The air was crisp, the streets alive, and I walked with a purpose I hadn't felt in years. He was waiting, paint on his shirt, grinning like always. "New canvas today," he said, tossing me a brush. We worked side by side, red and blue streaking the white, no rules, just motion. "You're free, man," he said later, over beers. "Really free." I nodded, clinking my bottle against his. I was. Free of the curb, the useless, the weight of their expectations. I'd lost a family, but I'd gained me a man who didn't break, who didn't beg, who stood in the mirror and liked what he saw. Corinne and Alina could keep sending messages. I'd keep living. The stars were out when I got home, bright through the telescope, and I played the piano until midnight, the notes my own. This was my story now, and I was writing it one day at a time.